I want to ask you about Hillary because, I think a lot of our audience thinks that, that she doesn't have America's best interests at heart. I happen to think she does. I openly, I lean a little bit more towards Bernie, but I think
I love what Bernie says and I love what Bernie says and what Bernie talks about, except the difference is I'm also able to look at Bernie as a legislator and what has happened and what he's been able to accomplish as a U.S. Senator. And then I also look at realistically some of the things that he's saying he wants to do. Like, I love the concept of free college, right? But the reality is that if he's going to depend on governors, like Governor Scott Walker, to be a governor to help to make what he's talking about happen, it's not real. And I think we should talk about what's real, what's practical, what can be done. Sometimes things happen in increments. And so I think Bernie talks a good talk, but I think the reality is that what he's saying can't be implemented. And a perfect example is we had that in Wisconsin and Governor Walker killed it.
I think what's interesting about Bernie, because a lot of Secretary Clinton supporters say the same thing, and they kind of start from a place of pragmatism, and they're kind of used to this politics where, this is politics, and you have to compromise on this and that. But what I don't understand is it seems to me that a big problem in the Democratic Party has been, you get this uproar for presidential elections, and then there's a drop off after. Right, young people not coming out for midterms, this and that.
Come out and vote.
Yeah.
And so we normally lose people in the midterm elections. It's exactly how President Obama, was in the situation that he was in. We had a similar thing happen here in Wisconsin. So yes, midterm elections, we lose individuals.
So I guess what I'm getting at is, to me, from what I see, Bernie is has the biggest chance or the best chance of actually, after getting elected, continuing to mobilize his people so that the things you're talking about that aren't, quote, realistic or, Hillary said pie in the sky, for people to actually keep the pressure on legislators so we don't just have to accept, it is what it is, governors aren't going to do this. Do you feel that if there's a real movement brewing under him, which I see at the rallies, that why is it unrealistic if he has this army behind him? As he says, we're going to go outside Mitch McConnell's window. And Mitch, I'm not first going to sit down with Mitch McConnell. We're going to put the pressure on him. Why is that unrealistic?
Well, I think two things. I think one, President Obama had numbers larger than Bernie's. And when he went to go and do policy and get things done, they stonewalled him and they did everything other than cooperate and work. Because the reality is that as human beings, and the Turkish community, I'm certain also can understand, like, let's take in Europe, just being treated fairly, right, is what some would say. So you can't make people do the right thing.
Right, but the difference with Obama is he didn't really continue to mobilize his people that got him into. He's been criticized for this, for not tapping into his huge grassroots network to keep pressure on.
And I think that if Bernie is suggesting that he's going to do that, it'll be a first and it'll be a trailblaze. And I'm not suggesting, right, that kind of connection shouldn't happen. I call that teaching our people civics, right? I call teaching people so that they know locally, who to call for garbage. People may call me for everything. And what isn't something that we can do, we connect them to whoever they need. But people knowing right away who to call and then knowing how to go and be a part of that change, that would be huge to move move the scale or the watermark, up would be great. And so I would love to see mobilization of people. I would love to see that connection that Bernie is talking about to be able to happen. But meanwhile, back on the ranch, I got to deal with practicality here. And the reality is that we do have right now a legislature at the national level that is mixed. Right. And as a result of that, like it or not, a president, unless that changes, that's what they're going to have to deal with. And at the state level, whether we like it or not, we have a legislature that is Republican with a Republican governor. So a Democratic president or an independent president who gets to hijack the Democratic Party, no matter what, that person has to deal with what they got to deal with. So someone's going to have to be able to deal with people across the aisle, and you're not going to just be able to drag every legislature to the exact place you want them to be.
I don't know about hijacking the Democrat. I hear this talking point now from Clinton.
He's an independent. Stop it.
Why is that a bad thing that he's an independent? He's caucused with Democrats 98% of the time.
I am not mad that he's an independent.
I know you just kind of threw it in there. So
Let me be clear, he has a right to be an independent. But let me be clear, he's an independent. He's not a Democrat, and so
he's got a groundswell of support, independent, Democrat, or alien. Who knows?
That is true. He does, but I'm just saying, from my perspective, I am a member of the Democratic Party, so I also support having a Democrat in. Some people are, as they call themselves, yellow dog Democrats. They will, vote for a Democrat before anything else. I
want to ask you though about the Democratic Party because. Let's be clear. When I go to Republican Donald Trump events, there's a huge battle going on with them. But I also see a brewing battle within the Democratic Party that the media is too focused on the horse race to actually focus on. But there's a lot of this movement behind Bernie Sanders who's frankly fed up with the Democratic Party and the establishment, particularly Hillary Clinton. Again, I think she means well and wants what's best for the country. I don't buy this SNL character that she just wants power and whatever. I mean, you're not in politics for 30 years just for ego.
She is about service.
Right, and she's done, she has done positive things. But when I hear, Bernie Sanders
Yes, for women, for the LGBT community, she's fought for workers' rights. I mean, Hillary has been engaged across the board. And so when you get done, this isn't someone who's new to this. Right. She's very true to the issues and the values that she's fought for.
What I'm asking, though, is because I keep hearing this thing that Bernie hasn't done anything in Congress. He and John McCain created the Veterans Bill, which was huge. There's been issues in the Veterans administration, but that was the most comprehensive Veterans Bill. He's also I think there's a statistics I read in the Times of all places that.
Let me be clear. I am not suggesting that Senator Sanders has not done anything in Congress. What I am suggesting is that you can also look at people's history to see the kinds of legislation that they've championed.
Hillary Clinton extended the Bush tax cuts twice. She voted for the Iraq War. I mean, I'm not seeing a lot of capital P progressive things that she's done.
And I think that that's the movement that you see within the Democratic Party is with a capital P. A movement within the party to move the party to the most progressive end of whatever the umbrella is in the Democratic Party. One of the things I like and one of the reasons that I've always been a Democrat is because of the embracing of diversity and the whole scope of who we are, whether it's from skin tone to view of thought. And what I've learned in my time in the legislature of helping to fight to get in the majority twice in the Senate is when your umbrella when your reach is large, you have a larger ability to be able to get individuals from one side all the way to the other. But when you require that everybody think one way, and that you only fit maybe all the way over to one extreme or another, then you lose individuals. And it becomes very difficult to build a larger enough consensus to be able to win our state, which is really, I would say, blue with a lot of red polka dots.
Well, I did a report this week about some of Hillary's fundraisers just in the last month. So one example.
Good question.
One example. She had a gentleman in California, Chicago, named Roz Fernando, big-time hedge fund trader. And over the years, he's donated between $150,000 and $300,000 to the Clinton Foundation, as well as several, I think about $40,000 just to Hillary directly. When she was Secretary of State, this gentleman was named to her national security advisors. He's a hedge fund guy.
Okay.
ABC did a report on it that, why is this guy on? He was on an advisors board with nuclear scientists.
Chicago stockbroker Roz Fernando. He was named to the prestigious International Security Advisory Board, but resigned last year, shortly after ABC News asked about his qualifications to be on the board. It was not something Fernando wanted to talk about this week.
With ABC News. Yeah,
That's more the micro to a macro thing. A lot of people view her as transactional. Do you understand why the average person, a lot of the people in Bernie's, Hillary is the thing they're focusing on, but it's a larger problem of, the concentration of wealth in this country you know the chart has skyrocketed to the top 1%. So why
should they only have access?
Right. Why should anyone watching now believe that when Hillary Clinton becomes president, these Wall Street guys, the fossil fuel guys, maybe not the corporations like she says, all these people that are bundling millions for her campaign, all these people that she has private fundraisers with, that she's not going to go in there and flip them the bird, you know?
So a couple of things. I think that it goes back to what I said earlier. I really believe that not understanding civics and the process of how stuff gets done does lead people to believe some of those pieces. Literature, TV, radio, people knocking on doors, yard signs, all that stuff costs money. None of that stuff is free. So even though the wealthy are the wealthy and they're the 1%, and there's so much lack in between where they are and where the average person is, in order to get a message out, you have to fundraise. So I don't think it's inappropriate for any candidate, right, to fundraise. And I get people can say, oh, well, they got money from X and money from Y and money from Z. You know, often dollars come in, I may not even know who donated. You know, so this concept of thinking every donor that you have, that you're extremely familiar with every donor you have, I think is, I don't think it's a fair thought, right, to have, number one. Number two, individuals donate, and people having access to me, no different than you having access to me, and being able to talk with me, ask me questions. I believe that that's just the way Hillary has been, and allowing accessibility, right, to her.
I just gave you an example that was very transactional.
I think that can be the appearance upon which it is. I don't know that gentleman's background. I don't know exactly on the committee he was placed on why that was. But then I will also say to you this, that when individuals give or whatever they may, it does not mean that my vote is going to be X, Y, or Z. And to believe that because someone gave, that my whole vote is going to be based on, or any of my vote is going to be based on because they gave to me versus the research, the facts, and the opinions and the perspective that I have. I think that what Hillary Clinton has shown is that she is a person who is willing, even on hard issues, to be able to formulate an opinion. I think she's shown herself to be able to dig in and to be solution oriented. And so I don't believe that those things are transactional, I think is what I'm trying to suggest to you. I believe that fundraising is a piece of what happens. I think placing people on committees or whatever, or in positions to advise you, are based on relationships and people's knowledge and wisdom. And I just got off of a radio interview on sports, and people were saying, why is Lena involved in what's happening with sports? Because I am not one-dimensional does not mean that I can't talk about sports. Right. And so I say that to say I don't know enough about the gentleman to know why his appointment is or is not appropriate. Right. And I don't believe that Hillary is making choices not based on what is best, based on people's resources, and based on people's resources not only financially, but on their resources in order to help whatever the issue is, or their resources maybe in experts or knowledge. Mm-hmm. And so I believe that she makes judgments that are visionary. And so I don't believe that it's done because she owes somebody in that fashion. And don't get me wrong, I get that in politics sometimes, that things happen based on relationships. I'm not suggesting that there isn't any of that, because of course everything has somewhat based on relationships. But what I am suggesting to you is that I don't believe that this concept of pay to play that's being suggested is true. As an elected, people donate to me. Their donations don't dictate my position.
Well, and this is the last thing about her, but I'll give you one more example. When she was First Lady, she met with Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren at the time wasn't known nationally. Mm-hmm. She really lobbied First Lady Hillary Clinton against the bankruptcy bill.
The last bill that came before President Clinton was that bankruptcy bill that was passed by the House and the Senate in 2000, and he vetoed it. And in her autobiography, Mrs. Clinton took credit for that veto, and she rightly should. She turned around a whole administration on the subject of bankruptcy. She got it.
And then?
One of the first bills that came up after she was Senator Clinton was the bankruptcy bill. This is a bill that's like a vampire. It will not die, right? There's a lot of money behind it. And
bill her husband had vetoed.
Her husband had vetoed it very much at her urging.
And?
She voted in favor of it.
The bankruptcy bill essentially would have hurt the middle class and helped the banks. She got a lot of money in her 2000 Senate from Goldman Sachs banks. She becomes senator. She votes for the bankruptcy bill. So she was against it, and then she voted for it after donations. That's what people are getting at.
Yeah, but I can't take you on that and agree with you on that for a couple of reasons. Your position as a wife, not a legislator, not the decision maker. So first of all, to suggest that what she thought is why the issue went the way it did with the legislature and with the president, I think is a far reach.
She was a very active first lady. She wasn't just a wife.
I'm not suggesting that she was not an active first lady, but to suggest that whatever the decisions are based on her, I give Bill Clinton and I give both the individuals in Congress, in both houses, the same credit to be able to make their decisions based on them. So number one. But your position as a legislator or as a spouse of a legislator is very different than the kinds of information that you are privy to as a legislator and the kind of information that you're able to look at and the decisions that you have to make. And candidly, I don't even remember right now the committee that the secretary was on when she was a senator at that time. But my point to you is that I refuse to accept, as somebody who sits in those shoes, that it's not different. My position as a lawyer and my position as a citizen before I was a lawyer, slightly different. And how I might perceive a case, information, facts, and my position as a lawyer compared to my position as a legislator is very different. As a legislator on a finance committee and a legislator who is not. Different. A legislator on Judiciary Committee and dealing with corrections issues and who happens to also be a lawyer, very different than someone who's not. So I'm just saying that I believe that the position as well as things change in the process of legislation. I don't know if the bill was exactly the same as the other bill or not, or if there were other changes. Often there are poison pills, as people like to call, put in legislation. So I might like everything about it. But thing X that's in it may be the thing that make me say there's no way that I can vote for it.